Okay, so in this I'm going to talk a little bit about the rise of Stalin and how Stalin ends up getting to become the leader of Russia when he really shouldn't be. He's not a real inner circle member of the Bolshevik Party. He doesn't really do much when it comes to the revolution, at least not enough to make him a leader. But there's a couple of things that occur that make it so that Stalin becomes the most powerful person in Russia. Right. The most important issue that kind of occurs is that after the Bolsheviks take power, they have to fight a civil war. And when they fight a civil war, they basically create a total war policy, which they call war communism. This is where they take complete control over the economics and politics of the areas that they control to fight the enemy. Now, war communism almost destroys Russia. And Lenin has to come in and put in what is known as the new economic policy, which is kind of like this hyper-regulated capitalism within Russia. But it allows for small markets, the ability for people to have some freedom, and that in turn stabilizes Russia. And it looks like there's going to be some sort of economic growth. Now, by the time the Civil War is over, there's this argument as to whether or not the NEP has run its course, and the Bolsheviks should turn back to what it was thinking about doing before the Civil War, or whether or not they should stay with the NEP longer. To make matters worse, you have a situation here that during the Civil War, the Bolsheviks ban all other parties, which means they are a single party state and only one party can exist, and they ban factions within the party. Now, the idea during this time period was that dissent was going to create a situation where they may lose the war. However, they don't get rid of it once the war is over. And this becomes something that Stalin can use to be able to weed out his political enemies. Then Lenin has his first stroke, and Lenin starts to become incapacitated. When Lenin becomes incapacitated, there's a power vacuum. There's no natural leader of the Bolsheviks in Russia at this point in time. So the second in command, and there's a couple of them, start to fight for power. The most logical successor is Trotsky. But Stalin manages to finagle his way into being Lenin's, basically taking care of Lenin. And Lenin can still hear and function, and Stalin kind of overplays his hand. Lenin's wife basically gets into an argument with Stalin. Stalin basically starts screaming at Lenin's wife. And at that point in time, it occurs to Lenin that a lot of what Stalin had been doing had really been an act for power. And Lenin writes something that becomes known as his last testament that asks the party to get rid of Stalin. Stalin has an uncontrollable temper. And, for all of his planning to get himself to a point where he's now taking care of Lenin and is in a position of power, he risks it all based on this anger. So you have a couple things that are going on that's going to set up this situation. One, the Bolsheviks have this ideological battle that Stalin can play. He can play left against right, war communist people against NEP people, original revolution people against both. So he can kind of finagle back and forth. Two, you have a situation in Russia where there is no real ability for dissent. And we'll get into more detail about that, but there's very little opportunity for people to be able to push their ideas if it is not the ideas of the leadership. And this comes from the ban on factions and the ban on parties. And Lenin leaves a power vacuum. Now, the final part of what's going to make Stalin more of a likely successor than people see at the time is Stalin will be given two positions in power. These two positions is head of the Org Bureau, or the Organization Bureau. This position within the party allows him to be able to appoint people to local party affiliates. He will also be the general secretary of the party, a menial task of people who basically rubber stamp who gets to get into the party. Now, in normal circumstances, when the Bolshevik Party was a small revolutionary party of people yelling at one another, these two positions really wouldn't matter. But when the Bolsheviks take power, and it looks like they're going to win the Civil War, millions of people immediately apply to join the party. And they do that because they see political advancement in it. So the type of people who enter the party are people who are much more bureaucratic and are looking to hold on to power. And there's a huge influx. What that means is whoever is the gatekeeper to the party can fill the party with his own supporters. And that is what Stalin's going to do. When you put these different points together, whether it be the sickness of Lenin, or the structure of the party, or the ideological battle, Stalin is going to be in a much more powerful position than other people think. With this behind him, Stalin is going to be able to utilize his own abilities of ruthlessness to be able to take out the other party leadership, people who were much more qualified, much more likely to become leader. It is a single focus that will allow Stalin to rise above all others and institute by force his vision for the future of Russia.